All right, folks. First, word of business. I will be out of town for a couple of weeks. I'm not bringing, I don't own the laptop anymore. Not going to be bringing a computer or anything. Probably won't even have much internet access. So I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks. So don't be alarmed. I'm not dying. I won't be dead. I did not kill myself. Just taking a trip. And so I probably will have like one more upload before I leave. So with that out of the way, there was an election yesterday in Venezuela, and don't we love Venezuela? Boy, how I wish my trip was to sunny Caracas, how I could celebrate with the lovely workers the re-election of the people's president, Nicolas Maduro, the vaunted bus driver, slayer of empanadas, shedder of pounds. By the looks of it, he's looking quite slim. And, of course, defender of Palestine. Now, I have to say, I am quite alarmed. I'm quite disgusted and offended, in fact, by the conga line of Americans in the media, in Washington, across the political sphere, who are condemning Mr. Maduro, calling him a dictator, and saying that this was a stolen election. Folks, I do not think that that is very healthy for our democracy to be criticizing elections. Personally, I'm someone who loves elections. I think elections should be free and they should be fair. And they cannot be free and fair if we have nasty, terrible people who are against the government, anti-government extremists, saying that elections are stolen. I believe in democracy, and you know what that means? That means that elections are never stolen. I learned my lesson from 2020. I said some things that I regret about the 2020 election. And you know what? I saw what happened to those terrible, no good, very bad January 6thers who thankfully were sentenced to life in prison and were punished for their crime of criticizing the 2020 election. And so personally, I'm not going to criticize the 2024 election in America or anywhere else. Venezuela had its elections, the government issued the results, and those are the results. If you don't like them, you should be locked in a dungeon. Life in prison is the only acceptable punishment for criticizing our democracy. Because, you see, democracy is a global phenomenon. Woodrow Wilson made the world safe for democracy. And that means that elections are legitimate. Sorry, Trump supporters. That's just a fact. Trump lost and Maduro won. Which is why I'm even so much more disappointed in Democrats who I thought, American Democrats, politicians, voters alike, who I thought they were above this. I thought they understood that criticizing our democracy was unhealthy. I thought they understood that accusing governments of stealing elections, that's treason. And yes, some of you might be saying, well, it's not treason because Venezuela, is not their country. These are Americans criticizing the election in Venezuela. That's not treason. Sorry, libtards. But we already learned from the Assange case, you can commit treason against somebody else's country. Julian Assange, guilty of treason. He was thankfully, he was, for his sake, pardoned by our noble and very generous President Joseph Robinette Biden. So he was allowed to go home free to Australia. But were it not for that, he would have been executed for treason here in America, because he was a treasonous Aussie who betrayed America, even though he is not American. So yes, all these Democrats who are criticizing Nicolas Maduro now, saying that he didn't hold a free and fair election, they're guilty of treason. And frankly, if they were extradited to Venezuela, I don't think that that's out of the question. You could, I believe in democracy, which means I believe in fairness and equal treatment. And if we Americans can extradite people to our country who aren't citizens of our country, who've never set foot in our country, for supposedly committing acts of treason against our country, well, so can Venezuela. And so Nicolas Maduro might just send up a list to the State Department or to the Department of Justice and say, these are wanted criminals who have committed crimes against Venezuela's wonderful democracy, who must be punished here in Venezuela. And so I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, but this is just the way it is. This is the way things ought to be. It is the only way that we have of preserving democracy. Because if people are allowed to question any election, what's stopping them from questioning every election? People on this planet must believe that our elections are legitimate. And that's all there is to it. America's future depends on it. And so, in the name of electoral justice, racial justice, social justice, I proclaim Nicolas Maduro the one true president of Venezuela. And anyone who says different is just as bad as Trump, nay, worse than Trump. I'm sorry, I can't do this shtick any longer. In all seriousness, this election in Venezuela, was it probably 100% on the up and up? Was it probably 100% legitimate? It wouldn't take too much for you to pull me to the side of saying probably not, to saying, you know what, there was probably something fishy going on here. Because generally speaking, I don't think that elections in the world are free and fair. I think that people in power always are trying to manipulate elections so that they win. I think that that is only the natural instinct, and that is an inherent trapping of democracy, and that is something that democracy should be criticized for. But alas, the American elite class does not believe that. They've made that abundantly clear. They believe the opposite, that you can never criticize democracy, or else you're a traitor. So, because I don't want to go to prison like the January 6thers, because I don't want to be potentially facing the death penalty like Julian Assange, I'm not going to criticize the election in Venezuela. I'm just not going to do it. It's not worth the risk. Because you know what? I don't even live in Venezuela. What does it matter to me if there's an election stolen down there? So, with that said, I will see you folks back here in the next one. It's just, it's simple stuff. I have nothing to say. I can't say anything about the election. Elections, they're legitimate. There you go. End of story.